These are the things that we should consider to avoid caption mistakes. First, do not be arrogant. Arrogance in captions comes when the person writing the caption doesn't care about the reader and simply writes a caption that is easy at the moment of writing. This can also be considered being selfish because the writer cares more about themselves than the reader who is trying to decipher what the photo and the story are about. Second, avoid making assumptions. You know what they say about people who assume. The same goes for writing captions. These assumptions could be on the part of the journalist, photographer, or even someone else at the publication where everything is being put together. Don't make assumptions about what was going on in the photo or who the people are. Find out the truth and only include what's accurate. This also goes for style and format. If you aren't sure if the publication has a specific format for captions, ask. Don't choose a format you like that may need to be completely revised later because you didn't ask.
Number 3. Make sure you are not sloppy. Sloppiness occurs when someone simply does not care or does not feel the matter serious enough to verify. Erroneous spelling, incorrect names for people in the photo, captions that do not match in the photos, incorrectly referring to the photo in the story, and so on are example of sloppiness. Do a good job from the start to finish if you are proud of your work. Number 4. Remember that what you print is considered fact. Whatever you print in your narrative or caption as a journalist is frequently seen as reality by your readers. They have every right to presume you have checked your facts and that what you are giving them is correct. You risk spreading inaccurate information to a huge number of individuals if you are too lazy or careless to accomplish the job.
Photojournalism composition. Composition is how the elements of a photo are arranged. A composition could be made up of many different elements or only a few. It's how the artist puts those things within a frame that help the photograph become more or less interesting to the viewer. Composition rules. So the first one is rule of thirds. The rule of thirds says that you should position the most important elements in your scene along these lines or at the points where they intersect. If the focus of your image is on land, like mountains or buildings, the horizon should fall near the upper third, and if the focus is the sky, like sunsets or sunrises, the horizon should fall near the lower third. Here is an example of the rule of thirds for a landscape photo. The next one is balancing elements. Placing your main subject off-center, as with the rule of thirds, creates a more interesting photo, but it can leave a void in the scene which can make it feel empty. Balance in photography is observed when an image has subject areas that look balanced throughout the composition. It is achieved by shifting the frame and just posting subjects within it so objects, tones, and colors are of equal visual weight. An image has balance when subject areas command the viewer's attention equally. Next is leading lines. When we look at our photo, our eye is naturally drawn along lines. Simply put, leading lines is an image composition technique that features line shapes like, say, a road or a river to draw the viewer's eye to intended subject of the photograph. Next is symmetry and patterns. Symmetry and patterns can make for very eye-catching compositions, particularly in situations where they are not expected. Symmetry in photography is achieved when two halves of an image hold the same weight and give a perfect balance between two sides of your photograph. Another one is viewpoint. Viewpoint has a massive impact on the composition of your photo, and as a result, it can greatly affect the message that the shot conveys. The viewpoint refers to the position we take the photograph from. This will also be the position you place the viewer in when they are looking at your finished shot. The viewpoint can dramatically change the feel of the photograph, like the example we have in here. The next one is background. The human eye is excellent at distinguishing between different elements in a scene, whereas a camera has a tendency to flatten the foreground and background, and this can often ruin an otherwise great photo. A big part of advanced photography is knowing how to capture your subjects in a great background, and getting that great background can often be a slight step to the side, crouching down a bit, or blurring out the background completely. If your photograph that you are taking is about your subject and not about the background, the goal is to try to eliminate any distractions. That is why a background can make or break your image. Put your subject in front of a super busy scene and it takes the focus off of your subject. Not to mention, it can sometimes create mergers. Your background shouldn't have a bunch of distractions and should help focus attention on your subject. Next is depth. Because photography is a two-dimensional medium, we have to choose our composition carefully to convey the sense of depth that was present in the actual scene. Depth of field is the zone within a photo that appears sharp and in focus. In every picture, there is a point of focus, where you actually focus your lens, but there is also an area both in front of and behind your point of focus that also appears sharp, and that area corresponds to the depth of field. Another one is framing. Frame can help to isolate the main subject from the outside world. The result is more focused image which draws your eye naturally to the main point of interest. Framing refers to using elements of a scene to create a frame within your frame. For example, you might shoot through a doorway, pull back curtains, branches, fences, big stones, tunnels, or arches to highlight your subject focus. With this composition, you can create depth in a photo and makes it more interesting. Next, cropping. Cropping tight around the subject, you eliminate the background noise, ensuring the subject gets the viewer's undivided attention. The word crop can be defined as to trim or cut back. The crop tool in most image processing programs is used to trim off the outside edges of the digital image. Cropping can be used to make an image smaller and or to change the aspect ratio of the image. And the last one is experimentation. With the dawn of the digital age in photography, we no longer have to worry about film processing cost or running out of shots. Motion blur, light painting, or double exposures are a few great ways to explore the camera's capabilities. Instead of editing the photographs by using digital software, you can try a wide range of shooting techniques to add little magic to your photos.
Next in line, we have the qualities of photojournalism, and it includes relevance, timeliness, objectivity, and narrative. First, relevance. Photojournalism is relevant, and its main objective is to tell a story better than a write-up. So therefore, it should capture images that have meaning or relevance to the story being told. For example, a story about a mother reunited with her daughter after being apart for 20 years will be more effective if this accompanied by a photo showing them rushing into each other's arms. Next, timeliness. Photojournalism is timely. It should tackle current issues or something people are talking about. So, because this will make the images more interesting to the audience or reader. For example, during when drug war is rampant, numerous photos of drug users being killed spread throughout the internet. And this image helped people from different provinces all over the Philippines understand the serious human rights abuse happening in our country. Also, photojournalism is objective. It is not biased, and it does not take sides. Therefore, the images should accurately show events as they are. So no matter what photojournalism believes in, whether he prefers to be objective or honest, the most important thing is for him to present the images as is. So for example, a photojournalist shooting a burial scene should not force his subject to shed tears because he wants to create a dramatic effect. Real emotions are captured candidly. And also, photojournalism is narrative. It works best if it is presented as narrative, and it should tell a story. For example, a photo that shows Two little girls lifting a small box of old clothes tells a clearer story than one that shows a box marked with old clothes. So those are the qualities of photojournalism: relevance, timeliness, objectivity, and narrative.
So now let's talk about the photojournalism standards that we need to remember. So when we take photos, we must always remember that we should be accurate and comprehensive in the representation of subjects. So let's say for example, kasi nga there are some issues or tendencies that while taking pictures, we can't capture the whole thing or the whole scenario. So it seems like it becoming biased. So it's stated that when we take photos, we should also recognize and work to avoid presenting one's own biases in the work and resist being manipulated by staged photo opportunities. So example, if there is a fire incident, so if we are the photographer, we should be accurate as far as we can do. Let's do our best to capture the whole scenario or the whole thing, not just having some portion or angle or some angle to take photos in the field of incidents wherein the whole story are being affected. We also maintain, or we should also always make sure that the photos will elicit and show respect and dignity for all subjects.
So now let's proceed to selecting pictures for publication. How do we select pictures, or what are the things that we need to consider when selecting pictures for publication? So we should make sure that our pictures has technical values. A picture should be clear, free from smudges, and not blurred. For example, in this picture, you can see that it has a good quality. So the picture has good use of light, color, a captivating moment of the children, the correct composition for the situation, and the photographers choose a good distance to their subject. So the next one is the editorial value. It tells story at a glance and shows life happenings or etc. For example, in this picture, we can see that the people are evacuating from the flood. So it shows what is happening in the lives of the people when the calamity strikes. So the next one, the prominence. It should be a picture of a prominent personalities that attracts the interest of the audience or reader. So for example, we can see that President Rodrigo Duterte is doing his campaign. So President Rodrigo Duterte is a prominent person in the Philippines. So now let's move on to the action. The picture should show an action. For example, in this picture, we can see Senator Lauren Legarda doing an action. So she shows showcase waving. She interact with the wavers and appreciate the work that poured into the textile they wave. So it is the hibla, keeping Philippine weaving tradition alive. So the next one is the human interest. Pictures should show emotions. For example, in this picture, we can see a boy together with his grandfather holding a book, reading in the silent, in the good environment, and we can it shows the emotional atmosphere. So as a human beings, we are drawn to emotion. Whether we're laughing or crying, emotion ties each and every one of us together. Images that capture genuine displays of emotion often prove timeless, and these meaningful moments will always capture the audience attention.
There are 5 tips that you should follow in photojournalism. First tip: a good photo tells a story better than the text that comes with it. So in order to tell a story, your photos should have the following elements, such as human emotions, if it conveys a feeling of being happy or sad. Another is facial or non-verbal expression, action something like extraordinary or unusual. Like for example, a blind father braille reading a story of his kid. Tip number 2. The photos should focus on the faces of the people, not on their backs or the backs of their heads, because we need to capture the emotion of what the subject is trying to depict. You should also take photos of people in action or people doing things. You should also avoid taking photos of people shaking hands or handing out awards because it bores the audience. Tip number 3. Make sure that your subject is always in focus. In this tip, you should always know what your central subject should be. Like for example, when taking photos of people stranded because of the storm. The focus should be on the people, not on the torrent of rain. Because if you want to focus on the rain, then your story should be about the storm and not the stranded people. Tip number 4. Before you try to decide upon taking photos of naked people, here are the tips you might want to follow, as these practice can be tricky as the photos might have been misinterpreted. Like for example, when doing a story about bare-chested native woman, we must first determine how to take photo in a manner that it won't come out offensive or in a way that it can be interpreted and add something to the story before making a decision. This is the 5th or the last tip. Always take note of the angle of the shots that you were taking to make sure that you chose the right to one or the right angle. Take a couple of shots in a different perspective. This is similar to what film directors do when they want to capture the scenes of their movies in different point of views.
Now, let's proceed to our activity time. Indeed, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Using the image, create your own headline or caption about the photograph and share why did you come up with that idea. So here is a powerful photograph by Dorothea Lang called The Migrant Mother. A little context about the photographer is that her images of desperately poor families told the story of those who had been unfortunate. Her camera gave a voice to people who might have been forgotten. She used the lens as a tool to lead a visual life to communicate the difficult beauty and power of what she witnessed. She believed that her camera was an instrument of democracy. She tried to be open-minded and approach her subjects with respect. She died in 1965 at the age of 70, but her personal philosophy continues to influence documentary photographers.